Right, it is disappointing. The Minister has to go because this is our last chance before a quite long break to appeal to the government to step up their game to respond to an emergency that's continuing to get worse in the housing and homelessness area. And I just hope the officials and the Minister will listen. I don't expect them realistically to probably admit that their policies are failing or to take on board the full package of alternative proposals that the opposition are offering. And sorry, could I thank Deputy O'Brien and Sinn Féin for giving us the opportunity to discuss it. RTE has sucked the oxygen out of the air. It's an important issue, but there's things that are impacting much more significantly on ordinary people out there, and they will continue to persist long after the RTE debacle is history and over the summer, more importantly, right? So I just want to make a few sort of specific requests. I agree with all the general points that have been made. The government has to the most extreme end of the crisis is people who are in homeless accommodation or who are threatened with being in homeless accommodation, right? And the government has to do something to stem the tide because it's getting worse, and they have to do something for the people who are trapped in homeless accommodation who can't get out of it because there's no alternatives available for them. So maybe let's start with the last point. All right, I heard the Taoiseach say today, when I put it to him, well, you know, people don't generally stay that long in homeless accommodation, and if they are stuck in it for a long time, he essentially, as Deputy O'Connell implied, he implied that it was their fault. Now, I can tell you that is not my experience, Minister, right? And I have written directly to the Minister, to the Taoiseach, about a number of cases, when solicited to do so, about working people with children who are in, to name just two cases, mothers, one in homeless accommodation now for 4 years, a working mother. Another who was in with me this week, 2.5 years, a working mother. These are people who are going out, working, paying their taxes, and they have kids, and they are trapped in homeless accommodation because they have nowhere to go. Not because they're refusing offers or anything that he seemed to be implying, but because they have nowhere to go. Now, will the government do something about people who are stuck on a long-term basis in emergency accommodation to make a special effort to get them out? It's bad enough anybody should end up there, but it is absolutely unacceptable that children should be left on a long-term basis. Can we have a little bit of targeted intervention to address that, those unacceptable cases? Secondly, I mean, we obviously are demanding you reinstate, even on a temporary basis, the eviction ban, because if we're going to address this crisis, to let hundreds more each month go into emergency accommodation is just crazy. It's insane to allow it to happen. And you say, oh, well, the eviction ban didn't have that much impact when it was in place, but it's worse now. And the figures are just rising and rising. So for God's sake, would you do something to stop people going into homelessness? It's just logical that you would do that. But if the only show in town is tenant in situ, will you at least make sure that local authorities are consistent in its application? Right? Dún Laoghaire Rathdown, it's in the papers this week. The person who was at the centre of that story was in my office this week, are saying, if there's management fees involved, we're not doing a purchase, even though the family is facing homelessness. That is not being done in other council areas. How can you allow that inconsistency? And for God's sake, if Dún Laoghaire Rathdown are saying management fees are an impediment to buying houses where people are threatened with homelessness, there's going to be thousands of people where that excuse will be used to protecting them from homelessness. Because think about how many people are paying management fees in multi-unit complexes, right? So you need intervention now with Dún Laoghaire Rathdown. My office were in touch with Dún Laoghaire Rathdown today about this, and we were told, the response back is, we can't talk to you about it. We can't talk to you about it. right? So they're obviously under pressure on the issue, but we need the Minister to get on to them and say, that is not an acceptable excuse, right? The cost rental, you need to address this quickly. I got a rubbishy answer back from the Minister about the cost rental. The income limits and the cost of the cost rental are not aligned, right? So huge numbers of people who are in the income bracket for cost rental are then told, actually, you're not eligible because the rent we are charging for the cost rental is not something you can pay on your income. So in other words, you tick the income box, but the rent is too high, so you can't actually apply. This is crazy. You haven't done the basic maths on the cost rental scheme. That has to be addressed. Another family I've raised multiple occasions, they have just discovered now they are legally evicted. The judge gave them a few months' stay, but they are facing the cliff in a couple of months' time, right? Working family again, over the social housing income threshold. Now discover they're over the cost rental threshold, so basically the council is saying there's nothing we can do for you, even though they do not have the money to pay the rents, or because they're older, they won't get a mortgage off the banks. They're not eligible for the local authority home loan. For God's sake, tell the councils something must be done for that family. Just tell them, stop them going into homelessness. Raise the thresholds, whatever has to be done, but how would you just let them be made homeless when they are clearly trying, as so many people are in that situation, everything. They're trying to explore every option. They've contacted hundreds of landlords looking for places they can afford. They have no options. You have to give them an option to stop them ending up homelessness, because at the moment they have none. Right? And when will the government just get this stuff into their head? That should be the instruction. I'll finish on this. The instruction to local authorities is do everything in your power not to allow people to end up homeless.